Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Daryl Urbanski, your host as always. And today we are joined by Anders Hansen. And Anders is an international illusionist, seven-figure CEO, and mentor. He uses illusion to teach something practical, how perception shapes results. For over 20 years, he performed as an entertainer. Later, through collaboration with Bob Proctor and other pioneers, he created Real Magic Live, an award-winning experience where stage illusion meets personal transformation. His work has been seen by thousands across Europe and the United States, and I've asked him to join us here today to share his story and talk about belief, attention, and why impossible is often just an illusion. So, Anders, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing?
I appreciate it, Daryl. Thank you so much for having me on. And I love how
Yeah.
you go to the heart of like business and conversations that centers around business and results. So for everyone listening, do me a favor and leave a 5-star review for Daryl and this great podcast. I did that today, and that ensures that he can get his message further out into the world.
Oh, that's so nice of you. Thank you. I really appreciate that, Anders. That means a lot. Now, before we get into kind of what you're doing today and your message and what you're working on, how did you even get into this line of work? Like, do you come from a family of entertainers? Were you like doing homework where your parents were practicing juggling and, and no?
Yeah, no, I was born and raised in Denmark below middle class, and I was a very shy kid in school, and magic brought something forth in me where now I could do something the other kids couldn't do, and it got me out of my own shadow. And yeah, like I turned into a version of myself I really didn't like after some years of work,
Hmm.
and I left Denmark and in the pursuit of a better life 19 years ago, and I landed in Miami, the US, with 2 suitcases and a deck of cards, and that was about it. And I started performing magic for tips in local bars and restaurants, and I got my visa approved, my work visa, and then I attracted an opportunity to go and produce and perform shows on cruise ships and television all of a sudden, and things took shape from there.
That's such a great, that's like the American story right there. Like I'm going to America with a dream and a skill, and I,
Yeah.
carved my way and away we went. That's really cool. So what, you just got off the boat, so to speak, and the heavens opened up and it was sunshine and rainbows and money started flowing from the skies?
I wish it was so. No, I actually crashed with my health at that time. I was flying on average 8 times a week, and it was always different time zones, different ships, and I was burned out with adrenal fatigue. And I was in a place where I think maybe a lot of folks can relate to. You reach a level of success, and everybody from the outside says, "That's great, well done." But it didn't feel like that. It was a dream of
Mm,
mine for years and years, but when I was in the middle of it, it felt very hollow. And I also kept asking myself every time we did a show, what difference did that actually make for the audience?
mm,
And the truth was not really anything other than they got a souvenir cup and a postcard, and the question, how did you do the trick? And at the end of the day, I didn't care if they figured it out. I kept asking myself, what did they get out of it? And so I had studied personal development for a while, The Power of Your Subconscious Mind. That book helped me go from performing on tips to performing these shows on cruise ships. And I knew there was more to life than what I was living. And I just made a decision right then and there that I was going to bridge the two worlds,
mm.
taking everything I knew from entertainment and merging it with personal transformation. And I also decided at that time I was going to work with the best in the world in personal development. And I attracted Bob Proctor in 16. He became a good friend of mine, a good mentor, and together we created a program, our live events. And so that took it to the next level. And that's where we are today. We're a multi-million dollar business. We've helped 10,000 clients. I lead a team of 5 beautiful souls that are committed to helping millions in the future lead better, richer, and more fulfilling lives. And so that's another short version of another story.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, that's a great story. So when you got into personal development, you read this book, it helped you overcome what were the self-limiting beliefs that you had? Like what was holding you back?
So the first big moment was when I read in The Power of Your Subconscious Mind that if you can think about a thought, you're not the thought. I had 100% identified with my habitual thought patterns. I thought I was my thoughts. And
Hmm.
so when I was stressed, I was stressed. When things, haywire, I was even more stressed. And I was a slave to my own thinking. That was my
Hmm.
first biggest realization is I'm not my thoughts. I can actually direct them. I can guide them. There's an
Hmm.
awareness there that I can shift and I can direct. And that's when everything started to change for me. That was my first biggest insight. And like I said, I went from performing for tips, like $20 a night was a great night for me. That enabled me to buy a Chipotle bowl once a week. That was my big celebration on a Sunday, was when I got to eat anything but the $1 Burger King hamburgers, you know.
Yeah.
And so going from that to, to these other results, doing big shows and television shows, I had to ask myself what happened, because I knew it wasn't an accident, but I also recognized I started directing my thoughts in a way I'd never done before. And that was the first major shift.
I can relate to that. I mean, I was adopted an orphan, and I remember there was a period of my life when I felt like my house was very dramatic to live in, and then I went and I did this program called Katimovic, where I lived
Okay.
with 10 other kids. It was supposed to make up Canada, so like a third spoke French, a third were
Hmm.
from the north, so we traveled Canada for 9 months. We lived 3 months in BC, 3 months in Alberta, 3 months in Quebec, and it was full-time volunteer work. You had a volunteer
Wow.
job, and after work, you were doing whatever the community needed: soup kitchens, parades, all that sort of stuff. And I remember when I came back, my house life was different,
Hmm.
and I realized that it was me that had changed.
Yeah.
That it wasn't everybody else in the house seemed to be the same, but my responses to those, you know what I mean? It's like that trigger. It's like before I would react, like they say kids push their parents' buttons. Like
Hmm.
before, buttons would get pushed and I would react away. But then when I came back, I had been away from it and I'd learned new skills, and I came back and I was like, oh, those buttons don't, I'm not going to get triggered like that anymore. And it became a really good house environment. And I realized that it's the whole Jim Rohn thing. If you will change, the world will change for you. I had changed, and all of a sudden everything else
Hmm.
changed in a positive way. What would you recommend to
100%.
someone starting out and struggling with that? That doesn't get that part yet.
Yeah, like you say, I mean, it's the first step is to realize that the biggest illusions are not the ones on stage produced by a magician. They're the ones we create in our minds. And in general, there's five major illusions, and we can get into them in a little bit, what
Sure.
they are and how to change them. But I think the very first thing we have to do to create a sense of want in changing, because we don't want to change just for the sake of changing. We need a deeper driver for that. So we want to get into
Mm,
goal setting first. And we hear all these people talk about goals, smart goals, these goals, those kind of goals. The best way I've ever learned was through Bob Proctor. He sat me down when we first met and he said, "What do you really want?" And I was like, "Well, I just want to get rid of debt. That was my goal, get rid of debt." He
yeah.
goes, "You attract more of what you're trying to get rid of. If you lose your car keys, you start looking for them. And it's the same with body weight and it's the same with debt." He's like, "So what do you really want?" "Well, then I just want to earn $20,000. And he goes, "Why 20,000?" "So I can pay off my debt." And he's like, again, it's not a good goal, you know? So you see that the mind keeps circling about what we want to get rid of. So then he invited me to think bigger. He said, How would your life change if you next month earned the same as you had earned all of last year?" And I said, "Well, I don't know how." He said, "That's the next illusion. People don't think they can because they don't know how." He goes,
Mm,
"Of course you can. You're equipped with infinite potential. So of course you can. You just don't know how yet. The how will show up." But he goes, "Before we even get into that, you have to set a worthy goal." So he looked me straight in the eyes and he went, "How much have you ever earned in a year?" I was so embarrassed to even say that. I've worked so hard for 20 years in the entertainment industry. And I had nothing more to show than 40 grand a year. So I was like, 40,000. He goes, "That's terrible. But what if you earned that in a month?" And I'm like, okay. So he said, "I want you to write down on a goal card that you're going to be earning 750,000 within the next 12 months." And I didn't believe I could do it, but I believed he believed that he knew what he was talking about.
mm,
And that was the first step, Gerald, to get me way out of the bounds of my previous way of thinking and allowing myself to ask myself, what do I really, really want? And that's where it begins. If we don't have that want goal, nothing else matters. And then he
mm,
started explaining how there's A goals, B goals, and C goals. A goals is what we know how to do. There's no inspiration, there's no growth. B goals, what we think we can do. And you see a lot of business owners go to the B goal. A B goal is what you think you can do. It's 10, 15% growth next year. It's realistic. We have all the plans, and gee, do we have a plan? It's printed out in colors. It's great. But same thing, very little inspiration, very little growth. And so what we're really doing is we're moving to a sequel, and that is what we want. And now it requires us to use our imagination. And we've been taught how to turn it down and go to the realistic outside world. We want to go the other way. And so that's where it begins. So before we start talking about how we're changing, I think it's really important we establish a healthy why do we want to change?
Mm-hmm,
Like,
mm-hmm.
how will that impact the family? How will that impact the kids? How will that create freedom for myself? All of that is the foundation. And then we can start talking about the self image, the emotional conception of ourselves. How do we feel worthy of the money we desire? That's a whole different conversation. And it's an important one. But I believe the foundation is the goal.
Yeah, I love that. It's the why is everything. I mean, it's like the book report you can't get done because you just have no heart in it. It doesn't mean anything to you. And
Exactly.
as someone that's lived it and experienced it, when you have something I had a book I managed to hit. It was a goal for me to get my book to hit number one on Amazon, and I got it. I like willed that to hit number one on Amazon, and it wasn't anything other than just pure will because I was so driven at the time. It's just something clicked, and my wife talks about this it's good and bad, but sometimes things click for me. Just as an example for people listening that maybe aren't, they get it conceptually, but things happen in my life where I get into a mode and she just knows to like clear our schedule, get kids out of the way, like just do it. In Daryl's, something's happened, and it needs to happen. And a great example of this was we were at the beach here, like my background, if you're on video, in Palawan, and we went to this beach this day, and this guy stole our bag, our dry bag, and it had our phones, our wallets in it. It had my passport, had everything. And the guy took it
Jesus.
and took off. This private beach. And I tracked him down. Like, I'm a foreigner, I'm in a foreign country, I have no local friends, no nothing. But I went into the security box and I was like, hey, can you have the CCTV of people exiting? And the guy was like, the security guy was kind of going through, but he wasn't going to find it. I was like, move over. And I got him to move over. I sat down. I found the guy with my bag between his legs. I took a photo. I'm posting it in Facebook groups. Anyone know this guy? Hey, who's this? I'm getting messages for people I'm tracking down. I ended up at his dad's house, talking to his dad about what's going on.
Huh.
Found out that he had the son, that with a girlfriend, and they can't afford to feed them and all this stuff. And I got everything back. But I tracked him down. And it was like, until that goal was achieved, like
Mhm.
nothing else mattered in my life.
Right.
Like everything else was just background noise. And that's, I think, what you're talking about. When you have a big why, this is,
Mhm.
a simple example, but when you tune into a big why, the universe gets out of your way. And yeah,
Exactly. 100%. And most people, that's a great story. You just become a dog with a bone. You don't let go until it's achieved.
yeah,
That's the way you
yeah,
want to treat a goal.
yeah.
And and it's not hard grinding. I think a lot of business owners fall prey to that because they have one of the five big mental illusions that we have. One of them is hustle and grind.
Mm,
And we live there because we have this subjective association between time and money. So we think that more time, more effort, raw persistence, better results. But it's not always so. Sometimes it's about using your mental tools, working from a higher level of consciousness, thinking from a higher frequency, so to say. That will yield us those exponential results. But if you're in doubt of whether or not the goal is the right one, then it probably isn't because we need to feel it. We need to really be
mm,
connected with it. Like you said before, you gotta have your heart in it. Most
yeah.
people think the heart is the physical pump in our chest. That's the heart of hearts, what the old Greeks referred to as the subjective mind. That has to be
Mm.
engaged for anything to happen.
Yeah, you got to get your whole mind, body, and spirit aligned around something that's motivating and rallying and
Yeah.
just a strong signal. So I love that. So what are these five major illusions?
Yeah, so I love that you ask. Most people don't have the awareness, which is why that's where I begin. Because if we don't know what's blocking us, how the heck are we going to move, towards what we want if there's this invisible barrier that keeps limiting us? So we've had thousands of people through our programs, like I said before, and we've identified the five biggest ones. The first one is hustle and grind. It's that equation between time is money. The next
Mm,
one is luck and chance. That's when we state our odds for success on something external. I lived in a city called Las Vegas 5 years too long, and the whole world travels there just to gamble on anything but themselves. And ironically enough, in that city, I met Bob Proctor, and I felt I won the lottery of the universe because I learned how to gamble on me. And that's the second one. Believe it or not, most people hope and pray that the economy is going to change, Their stocks all of a sudden is going to bounce, or the government is going to help them, or something else external. That's the second one. And it's a foolish game. People consistently undervalue their inner resourcefulness as opposed to the external resources that they think they need. And the third one is fear, the perpetual mental addiction with the worst possible outcome. The fear is a mental virus and it can kill us faster than a speeding bullet can. We want to really understand what happens in our system and where fear comes from. I'm going to dig into that a little bit here before we move on to the other illusions, because this is important. And especially in this environment today, so many business owners they're so fearful of everything. And fear is an emotional state, but it starts with the power that flows into our consciousness. It has no form. We give it form. I can think, doubt, and worry. I can choose to doubt and worry. That's a choice. It's an obvious ignorant thing to do, but I can, by the way of my ignorance, choose to doubt and worry. If I keep doing that, it will turn into the emotion called fear. That fear can only express itself with and through the body. Now it moves into a physical state. A person that is fearful, and that fear expressed on a physical plane is called anxiety. Now I can take a blood test from that person and I can show high cortisol levels, among other things. A doctor will numb that person with a stupid drug or something else that takes away the pain, but they don't realize where the main cause really arises. It's in our own ignorance. But let's continue down that path for a second. Fear expressed is anxiety. That's usually bottled up inside a person. They don't express it. They suppress it. They keep it inside. That turns into depression, and that turns into illness and disease. Dis-ease. It's a body that's not at ease. It's pretty obvious, actually, when we understand what the word means. But on the other side of that, we go to study and understanding. That's the polar opposite of doubt and worry. The more I understand my mind, the more I study my mind and the way it works, the more I can lean into an emotion called faith. It sets up actually an emotion called faith. The more I understand the universe, the more I understand my mind and how everything is being created, the more faith I build. And that is what we need. Now, faith and fear are two polar opposite emotions, but they both require that we believe in stuff we can't see. Right? So faith is in all the big religions of the world for a good reason. It's the ability to see the invisible, believe in the incredible, and that enables us to receive what the masses call impossible, right? Faith is essential. That also is expressed in the body like fear, but faith is expressed as well-being. You can see it a million miles away on a person. They're in a high vibration. They feel good. They express it. You can see the way they walk, the talk. You can see it in the way they carry themselves, that they are they're full of faith in their mission, in their goal, in whatever it is that they're pursuing. Now, that leads to well-being. That doesn't lead to depression like the other pole. It leads to acceleration. Now things start to pick up speed. It starts becoming fun, and that leads to growth. So the entire starting point is the power that flows in, has no form. Back to my first realization in the power of your subjective mind. I can control that thought power. The power is neutral. I decide what I want to do with it. I can decide to doubt and worry, or I can decide to entertain an idea of how I'm going to earn 10 million more next month. I'm drawing on the same power. I mean, the illusion of fear, and the reason why I wanted to go so deep into it is because it has such a stranglehold on a lot of entrepreneurs today. AI, what are we going to do? Oh no, what if the market? I mean, there's a ton of ways to measure what can go wrong, but we need to learn how to build more faith. It's done through a mechanism that is called auto-suggestion, but with emotion. So being grateful in advance for something that we want sets up a feeling called faith. So the more I can auto-suggest, the more I can dig into a feeling of gratitude, and we have tons of meditations on that. We give them away for free because I know how powerful it is and how important it is. That the more I can train my mind, not just to think grateful thoughts, but to feel grateful thoughts, the more I can train the gratitude, the more faith I build. And if it's gratitude towards my goal, it's faith towards my goal. And then you become invincible. But that's really how to overcome the third illusion. It's to go over to the polar opposite. I know that was a lot, Daryl, but I felt we had to go this deep.
I wrote it all down. I think that's so powerful because everything happens in the mind before it happens. You sit around and you go, oh, your mind notices, oh, I'm hungry. And you think about, I maybe should get something to eat. And you think about what you want to eat. And then, so everything starts and begins in the mind. if you're running a marathon or a triathlon, you're never going to have your mind give up on you and your body's going to go, come on, and carry you across the finish line. That's just not the case. Your mind has to carry your body. So what you talked about, I was thinking you said in that very eloquently a few things that I feel like I've discovered in a lot longer than it took you to say that sentence. So you talked about the power of autosuggestion, which is that self-talk, that self-dialogue. You talked
Yeah.
about how being grateful in advance. I wrote that down. You have to be grateful in advance for the thing that you're trying to achieve as if it has already happened. Because what that does is it builds emotion and excitement for it in you, which is fuel for the fire. And it almost makes you magnetic for it, And I was thinking when you were talking, I was thinking how, I don't know if this is going to come out of left field, but I think about death a lot, not in a morbid way, but how I'm going to die anyways. So I might as well design this life to be the best for what I want and enjoy it and do everything I can. Like, Daryl, get off your phone, go spend some time with your kids. Daryl, what are you doing? Maybe you should learn another skill. Like, make the most of the time that you have. I think of it a lot in that way. I see you might be walking. The other day, unfortunately, a dead kitten on the side of the road. And I was like, oh, that's going to be me someday. I better make sure I use today well. And like that sort of, not in a morbid or grim sense, but just in a, like, this is a gift. This is the gift of life, the miracle of life. And I should be excited about it. So you're talking about being grateful in advance for the result with emotion and how that builds faith. And so when you said that, the reason why that connected with my thinking about death is that it builds faith in that it can happen. And so for me, sometimes, whether it's good or bad, I have the faith that I'm going to die anyway. So if that's my goal, I'm just going to go until I achieve it or die. Like, that's just it. Like, when I set out something. And then when you have that faith, it's almost like, enjoy the journey. How good would a movie be if there was no challenge, no obstacle? Like, when you have that commitment, you don't expect things to be all sunshine and rainbows. You just go, oh, I just got to do this now. Oh, okay, I got to do this now. My goal is on the other side of these things in front of me. So I really like that. And fear was the quote, fear kills more dreams than failure ever will.
Absolutely. It does. It absolutely does. And so I want to tie something on to what you said or re-emphasized about the future. I call it future pacing your gratitude. So because the subjective mind is 100% deductive, it needs to accept ideas in the moment. So it's not enough to say, I'm grateful for something that happens someday. We need to turn that into an experience in the moment. And the only way we can do that is through our mental tools, especially imagination and the will. The will is the ability to hold an idea on the screen of our mind and exclude everything else. And then we have our imagination that enables us to build the picture. But those are the two tools we need to utilize to create that state in our body. And yes, we do become magnetic because that actually controls the way we feel then. And the word feeling is the word we use to describe our conscious awareness of the vibration that we're in. So we talk a lot about the law of attraction. People have heard about it, maybe as sort of a buzzword. The Secret, when that came out, the movie that Bob was in, it impacted 500 million people, but it was very superficial. It made it sound like you're just gonna think positive thoughts and you attract whatever you want, but it's simply not true. Like, we can only attract what we are a match with vibrationally, what we are an emotional match with. So that's why this is so important. So when I can future pace my gratitude, be super grateful for something I can only see in my mind, at this point, my senses tells me something different. But the moment I can disassociate from my senses and focus on what I see, that's when we won the game of life. And we'll keep winning the game of life. As an example, I was sitting in a one-bedroom apartment in Las Vegas in 2016. I had an eviction notice on my door. I had $50,000 stupid debt and a blood test that said I was sick. That was my starting point. And so I asked myself, what do I really want? I had studied personal development. I had read the book. I created some level of success and entertainment, but it was far removed from what I wanted. And so the idea of financial freedom and working with the best in the world in the personal development was very far from my physical reality. But I knew enough to know that if I just prime myself with that idea daily, it would change my physical world, because I also intuitively just knew that the physical is not where things are, it's where things end up. So if I can stay there, it will transmute to physical over a period of time. That's the perpetual transmutation of energy. That's a primary law of the universe. Energy moves from an energetic, invisible state to a physical state, back to an energetic state. And Hence, to your point from earlier about death, there is no death. Death is just a transition. There is that law that tells us that energy, you can't create energy, you can't destroy it either. It can only change its form. That gives us the law of life, Daryl. So you're an eternal being. We just happen to move into the body and we'll move out of it again, but it's both transitions. Life is eternal, energy is forever. And so I think that's important perspective to have, because as we navigate this physical world around us, we perpetually look to resources outside, we got to realize they're already inside. We are already rich. Some people are just a little short of cash, and that's okay. We can rectify that with the right mindset. But that's where it begins. In 11 months, like I went from that 40,000 a year, 50,000 in debt. So you see, it wasn't a great situation. If I had just paid debt all year long, I would still be in debt. But I went from 40 a year to 750 in 11 months. It was such a shocking result. I had a hard time believing what the heck happened, but I just did everything Bob told me. And it was a mental game. It was an energetic mental game, not just mental, energetic too. It was a
Mm,
frequency game more than a strategy game.
I love that. I love that so much. And what you said there makes a lot of sense. Like, I always think, when do you become you? Are you
Hmm.
you when the sperm and the egg meet? Are you you when the heartbeat starts? Are you you when you come out and you start crying? Are you you in the cascading series of events that have to come together and coalesce so you could even be conceived?
Yeah.
Like, at what point, like everything, like the ocean, all the movement of the ocean happening all over the world, so this one wave could crash on your beach. All of life is happening, and it all had to come together in that moment for you to be created. And when did you become you? Are you you in all those series of cascading moments? Are you you in the sperm and the egg meet? I mean, that's such a powerful thing. And so that's where I like when you said how the physical is not where things are, it's where they end up. And that's what I thought about, was the cascading, like everything collapsing into this moment in time to
Yeah.
make this the reality. And different people, you talked about death, you know some people think we die and go to heaven, and that we have an
Hmm.
immortal soul. Some people believe in
Hmm.
reincarnation, and that we're going to
Hmm.
live over and over and over again. Some people
Hmm.
believe that we're going to achieve immortality through technology and
Hmm.
scientific advancements. In all cases, there is the belief that we could have an immortal existence.
Hmm.
So this is where, on an immortal's timeline, what would be the things that would make you proud? What would be the trophies you would want to hang up on your wall? And we talked before we even hit record on this, how a lot of
Hmm.
people, they just accept what life's given to them. But
Yeah,
if they
absolutely.
if they looked at life on that terms, what would make your immortal self proud? What goals? What things would you want to hang up on your
I,
wall? I
I
think
love
that
that,
that's a
Daryl.
better approach.
It's a very deep question. I think there's two games we can play. We can play the infinite game, or we can play the short-term instant
Mm,
gratification game. And
mm,
I think it depends on what game we play. The trophies change. And I used to play the short-term instant gratification game, where the trophies were the shows, the standing ovations, the ego that loved it. The more I worked with myself, the more I realized it's an eternal game we're playing, and the real trophies are the people we impact. It's the awareness that we create, and the impact in people, the ripple effect that's really being created because of our existence on the planet. And there's a
mm,
great book out by his name is Michael Spalding, and his book is called The Gift of Influence, and it's a great book to read because it gives you more humility about your life and the opportunity we all have to impact each other in a positive way.
mm,
He actually suggests in the book that we each, at the end of life, have impacted on average about 80,000 people. And so he brings you into this mental exercise where you imagine you walk into a stadium of people just all cheering for you and the impacts you've made and the people you've helped. On average, that's a lot. But what if we could take that 80,000 and turn it to 800,000? Now, that's my goal is to impact millions of people globally to lead better, richer, and more fulfilling lives. I believe it's our birthright. I believe it's in our DNA to experience and express more freedom. And it's not always millions and billions in the account. That's not what it's about. But it's about doing the things we love to do with the people we love and
mm.
whenever we want. I think that's the highest on most people's list. But when that is set, the biggest trophy is one that belongs in the infinite game, is where we keep expressing ourselves in a bigger, greater way.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I believe that we're here for a shared experience. We don't really know what this is, but it's here, and it's a shared experience. You and I are sharing this moment of life. But I mean, more humans have lived and died than are alive now, right?
Exactly.
And so we, for whatever reason, you and I are here at the same moment, same time. And so I feel like our job is to collaborate. We're built for collaboration. That Marcus Aurelius says that in his book Meditations. We're designed. Humans, you look at little kids, they just want to play with each other. They just want to collaborate.
Exactly.
And that's where, hey, we're here for a shared experience. And my job is to help you have as great of an experience as you can have. And I'm going to have a great one. And I'm going to do my best to protect myself for people that don't think that way. But at the same time, it's like Jesus said, if somebody smacks you, what do? You give them the other cheek, right? Like, hey, we're here in this together. We got to try to, without being cliche, we got to, spread more love. And so,
I love them.
So, all right, hustle and grind, luck and chance, fear. What are the remaining two?
So the fourth is lack and limitation, and that's when we go to the external for our resources. I don't think I have enough. We focus on resources over our own inner resourcefulness. So we keep looking at what's missing. We keep saying, I can't because. And whatever follows because is something external. So you hear business owners say, well, I would, of course, they will listen to this and they will hear my voice and your voice, and they will in their mind go, well, I hear this idea of a 10x quantum leap next year, but of course I can't because I don't have the money, I don't have the team, I'm lacking this education, this course, or whatever it is. So they put this obstacle up in front of themselves about why they can't. And it's usually external resources that they go to. And the fifth one is knowledge. It's a big one. And knowledge, I mean, my gosh, if that was the deal, AI would have solved all the world's problems, but it hasn't. And so knowledge, you see a lot of people, they just gather the knowledge. They just sit on ChatGPT all day long and gather the knowledge, but they are never able to translate it into physical results. The huge gap that exists becomes wider and wider between the people who just retain the information and the people who actually execute. And so in the fifth illusion is where we understand that in our lives, there's a gap between what we know and what we do. And that's when we help people rewire their mind so they start executing on what they know they should be doing. And so these are the five biggest illusions. And as part of our giveaway, we have this test anyone can take, and that will identify where you personally fall within that spectrum of illusions and which one is the most predominant. Because once you know what will give you guidance on what to do to overcome it.
So you said there's a test. What kind of test? Where do I go to get this test?
So we put together a bundle called the Real Magic Reset Kit, and all they have to do really for the listener here is to find me on Instagram or Facebook at Real Anders Hansen. It's one word, real, and then ANDERSHANSEN. And then you just pop in the word best business and one word, name of the podcast here, best business. And then we automatically send the whole kit. It consists of the assessment, the illusion breaking assessment, so you understand how you're programmed, and then you will get a PDF that describes what to do about it. And it also includes a lesson from the program that Bob Proctor and I did, from The Secret to Real Magic. And that will help a person understand their mind in relation to their body. And it will also help them set the right type of goal. It comes with a PDF with 13 tips from Bob and I in terms of how to do it. And then what I believe is actually the most crucial thing, Daryl, is the technique and how to prime yourself so that your mind and central nervous system now is in harmony with that identity and that goal. So it doesn't just stay in the conscious mind, And that's all included in the kit. It's completely free. Anyone can download it, but specifically for your listeners here, it's put together for that purpose. So it's more of a business angle, and it's best business, one word, at Real Anders Hansen on Instagram.
That's awesome. So go find them on Instagram or Facebook and just send the message best business is one word. That's Real ANDERSHANSEN, Anders Hansen, Real Anders Hansen. That's fantastic. So, okay. So people can go and get diagnosed, figure out which one's holding them back, get some real tips and activities that they can do to find their breakthrough, to move past that. What are some of the habits that you think people should have, like long-term? You talked about thinking long-term, not short-term. So what are some of the habits that you feel are most important to achieving success in the life that you want?
It's a great question. I love that you ask. The first one is accepting that personal development is forever. We got to allocate 30 minutes to an hour every day to work on our mindset and our skill set in our respective industries. That is an absolute must. Now, when it comes to our own mindset, what we also need to do is habitually auto-suggest our goal. So in that PDF that people can download, there's a little goal card. We want to write that out and we want to carry it with us in our pocket, because that will now serve as a trigger mechanism for our goal. So every time my hand goes in the pocket, I'll actually trigger cells in my brain that will show me an image of that goal. So eventually the goal will sink deep into my subjective mind through that repetitive process. That's the second habit. So the study habit, the goal integration habit, and definitely the priming technique that I also give a link to in the download. That's essential, and I'll throw something on top, and that's the whole future pacing of gratitude. Like, being grateful for the goal in advance will be some of the absolute non-negotiable essentials a person need to integrate to see momentum. And the thing is, now we are getting closer to, at least at the time of this recording, getting closer to Christmas and the holidays and New Year. People will advertise with their ignorance of how the mind functions by setting New Year's resolutions. It's a stupid game, in my opinion, because we're trying to force a behavioral change on us when the part of our mind that actually defines our behavior hasn't been changed. So it's all symptom treatment. So today's a good day to start integrating these new things so that the next year and the next year and the next year becomes the best year. And anyone here, anyone listening, can create a 10x quantum leap next year. No excuses.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, people always like to say, get out of your comfort zone. But the reality is that a lot of the stuff you have to work on yourself, as you said, and
Yes.
it can be uncomfortable. You have to face parts of yourself. You have to identify self-limiting beliefs or thoughts or habits or actions that you're taking. I mean, he's the example, not to live in the negative, but if you worked in an office and every time you left at 3:30 p.m., you would pass someone in the lobby and you made you feel this negativity. Well, you do that Monday to Friday for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and now you're not working there anymore. You're somewhere else, but it's 3:30 in the afternoon. For some reason, you're feeling this anxiety. And where is that? I noticed that when I was a teen, because I was going to this boxing club and I was training Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. And there was one night, it was a Wednesday. I just was so full of energy. And it was because that was when class usually was. And I realized that I had conditioned myself on the other days that even though I was just like going to sit at home and watch a movie with friends, I couldn't sit still because I conditioned myself. And that's kind of what I think what you're talking about here. You're conditioning your people need to condition themselves emotionally and in line with a deeper why. So as they're walking through the timeline of their life, they start looking at things coming at them and decisions in the day and planning my schedule. And they start making decisions that are aligning with that version of themselves they're trying to be. And that's
exactly.
And that really helps them sort, to focus on to ignore the trivial many and focus on the critical few. Yeah.
That's it.
So where do you think things are going? I mean, you just talked about, how we turned sand into intelligence, which is AI. We turned sand into silicone and silicone into computers, that knowledge gap. So there's a lot happening with technology right now. There's a lot happening geopolitically. What are you kind of watching through your crystal ball, so to speak, for the next 5 years or so?
That's a great question. And, I follow along with the developments, but I don't let it control me emotionally. Same with everything that's going on geopolitically. A journalist asked me not too long ago, and she said, "What do I think about this and this?" And I said, what if a recession comes? What if the economy crashes? And I said, "I'm not going to participate." And she goes, "Well, you don't have a choice." I said, "I do have a choice mentally, whether I participate or not. I just won't let it control me." I've had terrible things happen, crashes, things in my life and my business, but I just don't let it control me. And same with the way things are moving. I'm very optimistic. I think that the trends we see in technology with AI, it's going to elevate everybody. It's going to make our lives more productive. It's going to actually, when we look at the natural laws of the universe, there's a law called the law of rhythm, and the rhythm always compensates. There's a rhythm in the stock market, and there's a rhythm in the beautiful beach behind you. The water flows out and it flows back. It never just stays out. There's a rhythm to it, and it's the same with the developments in technology in the world. Right now the pendulum is right over here, far out with advances in technology, and people are getting more and more disconnected in a way. But that pendulum it's already creating a vacuum, actually. The people are craving realness. They're craving authenticity and realness. And I think for all business owners that lean into that, leading with it's okay not to be perfect. It's actually fine when the video isn't on point because then they can see it's real. I think that's what people buy into. People buy from people at the end of the day. And
Mhm.
that pendulum is going to swing back, and we're going to have a very new world. Yes, with technological advances we can only dream about at this point, that our forefathers would, never be able to even think about or dream about. But what makes us human is not going to go away. And I think all
Mhm.
business owners that lean into that are the ones that are going to come out stronger. But they're going to
Mhm.
utilize the technologies to get there.
Yeah, I love that. I actually spent $50,000 in a couple of years going through all the academic literature on business success, what moves the
Hmm.
needle for small and medium-sized businesses. And we
Hmm.
identified 8 critical success factors. It was self-efficacy, market intelligence, strategic planning, marketing strategy, sales strategy and skills, money management, business operations, and business intelligence. That those were the 8 umbrellas. But we actually identified a ninth, which was
Hmm.
government and economy. Like good
Hmm.
governments versus bad governments, good economies
Sure.
versus bad. They have an impact on business success. But even actually, I had an interview with someone on my podcast. His family is one of the largest hotel chains in Asia right now. And he was
Hmm.
saying that in Indonesia, when he was in his 20s, he was running this hotel. They were setting up, and there was a civil war happening. There were tanks rolling down the streets. There was like riots outside and people throwing Molotov cocktails into buildings. But he's like, so what we had to do is we had to take the blankets and tie them together with knots so they would be like a ladder out of all the bedrooms. And I'm like, wait. You mean you were still in the hotel operating? Like, yeah, well, the show must go on. So there's like tanks going down the street outside the building, and the 3 buildings on the street are on fire. And they're just like, sir, waiters going, hi, what would you like to eat today, sir? Like, would you like
Yeah,
like serving the menu? And he's like, there's going to be opportunity and difficulty, and it's like you get to choose on what you're focused on. And
absolutely.
so what we learned with the ninth factor, government economy, is you as an individual, that's beyond your control. What you need to do is obsess about what's within your control and do the best that you can with what you got, and that will
That's it.
lead you through. And I think that
That's
that's
it.
a really powerful message, and it aligns with what you're saying, that whether the good things are good or bad, it's not going to change that
Well,
I have to get up every day and perform.
the truth is they're neither or. Things just are. It's the way we perceive them that makes them what they are. And I
Hmm.
remember Bob saying that when the world was, sold on fear back in 2020, and
Hmm.
Bob said it's so terrible what's going on, so it must be really good. We
Yeah.
may not find out the good.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like really terrible, really good, little terrible, little good. It's so terrible that it must be really, really good. And we
Hmm.
may not even find out in our lifetime what the good is, but it's
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And that reminds me of another great book he used to recommend. It's called Man's Search for Meaning by
Yeah.
Viktor Frankl. And here's a guy that was in the German concentration camp in the war. He was a psychiatrist, and they executed his family, nothing left. He was obviously subjected to torture mentally and physically for a period of years, but he reached a conclusion that no matter what this man was subjected to, nobody could force him to think something he didn't choose.
Hmm. Hmm.
And he called that the last of human freedoms. So regardless of what's going on, we have nobody can force us to think something we don't want to think. And he concluded it wasn't the strongest ones in the camp that survived. It was the ones that didn't let themselves be affected mentally or emotionally by what was going on, that chose
Hmm.
freedom in their mind. And he said there's a stimulus between what happens and our response to it. And in that little gap of time is where freedom lies.
I love that. I love that so much.
Mm.
That's a very powerful message there. That it's not
Mm.
what happens to you, it's how you choose to respond to what happens to you, which almost makes it seem like whether this is a simulation or whether this is God's test and whether we go to heaven or hell or whether we're reincarnating to learn some sort of lessons. It really does seem like that that's the make or break it. That what we're talking about today is for the whole bag of marbles. Like that's the whole bag of marbles right there. Just
That's it.
this piece here. What are we doing with this spark of consciousness that we've been gifted? And that's such a powerful message.
Very
Anders, it's
powerful.
been such a great interview. I've got a couple pages of notes. I want to be respectful of your time. Is there anything I haven't asked you that I should have asked you?
You've done really well, Daryl. I really appreciate you as well for the great work you're doing and all the businesses you're helping with this. It's really amazing. And no, what I would say is to round this off is it's just people think that there's external things that limit them. It's not true. There's infinite potential within us. It's not who we are in at our core that's holding us back. You know, there's
Mm,
infinite potential there. What's holding most people back are the illusions of who we think we're not. That's what's holding most people back. And I really, truly hope with this episode that we were able to overcome some of those illusions, or at least highlight the ones that are existing in our lives, and then, yeah, provided the tools to help people move forward.
I love that. I love that. And if people want to learn more, if they want to follow, they want to find out what they should go to Real Anders Hansen on Facebook and Instagram. Is that the best place for them to go?
Yeah, that's the best place. Real Anders Hansen, Instagram, Facebook. Just DM us the word best business, and we'll send that whole kit over like we talked about before.
That's fantastic. And if you guys ever want to check out his website, see what events he has coming on, you can go to andershansen.com, ANDERSHANSEN.com. Anders, thank you so much for joining us today, for sharing your knowledge, your gifts, your story, knowing you have your own audience, your own direct reports, your own clients, customers. Thank you for coming and sharing with us all so we can all hopefully perform a little bit better.
Appreciate you, Daryl. Thank you.